everyone, I'm Meghna Pant and I'm very excited today to be in conversation with Gopika Kapoor, somebody I've known for what? Almost a decade, right?
Yes.
She's a talented author, a child development therapist, and most importantly, a fun and loyal friend. And I'm very excited to discuss her book today, Beyond the Blue, that discusses for the first time in India autism and how parents can raise an autistic child. And for me, it was a very heartwarming book, like soul-bearing book for me. But most importantly, what I really liked about it is that you spoke about the fact that, of course, you're coping with differences, but you're also celebrating them, right? That whatever sets us apart also kind of brings us together. And for me, I think that was really the quintessential kind of beauty of the book. And I think in that it'll have a very sort of universal and warm appeal. So thanks so much. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much. So am I.
So Gopi, my first question, of course, is Beyond the Blue. It's the first time an Indian parent has written about autism in the Indian context.
Absolutely.
So, what drove you to write the book? What inspired you, and what did you feel like when you were writing?
So I think what part of what inspired me was what you talked about, that this is the first book which is by an Indian parent in the Indian context. So when my son Veer was diagnosed at 3, of course the first thing I wanted to do was read everything that was out there, and everything was from a Western perspective. Now, in India and in the subcontinent as such, we come from a very different place culturally. Our family dynamics are different, our society is different. So, I was really looking for something that I could relate to, and I couldn't find anything. I wanted to work to do something to kind of give back, because I realized how privileged I'd been with Veer. I'd had access to the best medical and therapeutic care. I didn't have to worry about the finances to pay for his therapy, and I could access a lot of resources. So I started working at Umeed Child Development Center. Started out as a junior therapist, worked my way up to work with other families, and over the course of 10 years, as I worked there, I realized that I was in a very unique position. So not only was I a parent, I had also gained over 10 years professional experience and knowledge, as well as those little strategies and tips that you know from living with the condition of autism. And so, being a writer, I thought that I would use this knowledge and this unique perspective that I had to write the book. Writing it was actually very cathartic in a sense. I remember writing the first chapter and going to my husband and crying and saying, I can't do this, this is too hard, it's too much.
It's very emotional, right?
It's like reliving, it was for a lot of ways, it was like reliving the whole thing.
Yes.
So it was difficult in some aspects. On the other hand, it was really liberating, because when I relived the whole thing and when I looked back on all the years that we had spent with Veer, it made me realize and accept him even more. And I realized that yes, he has evolved so much over the time that since he was diagnosed. It's been 12 and a half years now.
Yeah.
And so it really made me appreciate him a lot more. So it was a really wonderful experience. And mostly what I wanted for parents to get from this book is that while their lives will be changed, there is no question that a diagnosis of, forget about autism, any sort of difference in their child, when their child is different from the norm, their lives are going to be different, but that doesn't make things a bad different.
Yes, exactly. I think that's something your book has underscored
Yes.
for sure. But what I found really interesting is, of course, Beyond the Blue is a book that helps you understand an autistic child, right? And there are lots of helpful tips inside it. But for me, the starting point of this journey is the parent, right?
Yes.
So you've underscored again and highlighted this fact that the parents, the stages that they undergo, right? From denial initially, then anger, frustration, hopelessness, to finally coping with their situation, right? How did you sort of juxtapose your own journey and bring it into how it can help parents cope through these different stages?
So I got my stages, or I used the stages that have been discussed by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in her book on Death and Dying. She talks about 5 stages which any person goes through when they are dealt with any sort of trauma or any sort of event which alters the course of their life. which is denial, anger, bargaining, sadness, and finally acceptance. I went through these stages in my own way. It's not like, okay, week one you will go through stage one and in week two you will get through stage two. It's different for everybody, and a lot of it is juxtaposing one with one another. So, of course, the initial thing was denial. The initial feeling was denial, where I was not convinced that there was much wrong with my son. At that time, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Illnesses and Disorders had a classification of autism as something called PBD-NOS, Asperger's, and autism spectrum disorder. So, Asperger's is supposedly the genius syndrome, where there are people who are very, very smart, super smart geniuses. They say Einstein was one, but with very limited and awkward social skills. And I was held on to this label of Asperger's for so long, and that was part of my denial.
Yeah. I was kind of glorified in Hollywood.
It has been. It has been in some ways, and again, only certain part of life or living with autism as a caregiver or as a person with autism has been portrayed.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing, and then of course simultaneously there was a lot of anger, a lot of why me? Why did this happen to me? I would get angry at the drop of a hat, which any parent of a child who's around 3 years old would probably, it's difficult. I mean, I have twins, juggling their lives, juggling their schedules, trying to figure out what life is about and how to kind of take it forward. You lose your identity in a way.
Yeah.
That is tough in any case. There was a lot of anger. There was also, at one point of time, a lot of crippling sadness, because it was just this whole realization that, look, I am different from the other parents out there. I am different from the other mothers out there, and my child will always be a little different. I remember this one incident very clearly, where we were invited to a friend's child's birthday party. It was huge party, and lots of kids. And we went and filled his plate, and there was a group of boys at the table. And he came and he sat down. He wanted to stand there, and he stood over there and said, "Can I sit down?" And this one boy said, "No, get lost." And I saw that, and I literally choked up at that party. I had to run out. It didn't make any difference to him. He was fine. He just took his plate and went and sat down at another table. But that realization that there are people who are not going to accept him, was absolutely crippled me that day. I felt like I couldn't move on from them. So again, there was tremendous sadness. There was this whole thing of, looking at different kind of avenues, exploring different kinds of therapies, trying to even go to a faith healer and figure out, if there was some sort of past life connection, or if there was some sort of pranic healing that would be able to help him, whatever it was. As a parent, you will do anything to help your child, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, over time, I think the phrase that time is a healer is the most cliched but the most true.
Yeah.
Because you do start to accept that this is who your child is. You do start to accept that your life will be different, but again, like I said, not so bad.
Yeah.
And I think when you do that, there is a renewed respect for the child, there is a renewed love for the child, and you realize that, you have to make your life the way it is.
Yeah.
And that's what you end up doing. So I went through all that. It took a long time. It took many years. But eventually, touch wood, I got there.
And got there so beautifully. Hats off to your courage. I've known you personally, so I never. By the way, I didn't even know that you had a child on the autism spectrum till I saw a news article about it.
Yes.
Which was last
That
year,
was
and I've
last
known you
year,
for
yes.
more than a decade.
Yes.
So there's just no indication, But I think for me, another thing I found very interesting is that you spoke about the fact that parents with special needs kids have the families have a special bond. But if you are a parent, say with an autistic child, where do you go for this, for building this community? Are there resource centers? Are there sort of counseling sessions? Because it's a microcosm,
It is,
right?
it
and
is.
It's how do you burrow your way?
So actually, there is a study which estimates that there are over 2 million children with autism in India. So actually,
Right.
it's not as small a number as
I can imagine.
what there isn't is awareness, and With
Yeah.
awareness, there isn't acceptance.
Yeah.
But in metro cities, there are resource centers, there are support groups. I would say that compared to 12 years ago when Veer was diagnosed, there are a lot more now. Many, many more now.
Yeah.
Also, in smaller pockets, in smaller towns, there are these centers which are opening up.
Yeah.
I've heard of a center in Kulu. I've heard of a center in Assam somewhere. There are centers in much smaller towns, and that is a really good thing.
Yeah.
The other thing is that a lot of pediatricians don't know about autism.
They don't.
They don't. So
That's
pediatricians have actually, I know from pediatricians that actually when they study pediatrics, autism and other developmental disabilities are probably about half a page in their textbooks.
Oh.
And so Umeed, where I used to work,
Yeah.
has a course for pediatricians. They
Okay.
actually do a training for pediatricians to explain different kind of developmental conditions to
Right.
them and tell them that look, this is what it is, this is how you diagnose a child.
Hmm.
And so they do trainings like that. There is much more awareness now. I would say we need, of course, we need much more.
Yeah.
But there is much more awareness. There are
Is it like
parent groups.
Alcoholics Anonymous, like how the show? Is it, are they groups like that?
So there are parent support groups.
Okay.
There are very, very good parent support groups, and all these have been started by parents themselves.
Okay.
So again, parents have become advocates for their children. They have
Yeah.
spoken up for themselves. They've spoken up for other parents like them.
Yeah.
So that's also partly what led me to write this book, right?
Yeah.
That as a parent of a child, if this is what I can do,
Yeah.
help raise the awareness and build the acceptance within the society we live in.
This is very interesting, because I know I had kids at a slightly later age, and I remember like there was so much fear put into my mind, especially in India, women have children, above 30. So I remember looking out so deeply for chromosomal abnormalities. My baby is 9 months old, and the older one is 3 years old. And I remember watching them very carefully. But honestly, if you're saying pediatricians can't help, as a parent, then what should be the first sign you should watch out for to know if you have an autistic child? And then what should be the first step you do? The important thing that you should do immediately.
So, unlike other genetic deformities or autism cannot be detected in utero.
Yeah.
So, the first thing that a lot of parents, when they used to come to me for therapy, they would say, we noticed that there was no social smile. There was no
Okay.
meeting the eye.
Yeah.
And all this was before the age of 1. So
Yes.
before 12 months, no social smile, no kind of reaching out for the mother or the father, which is what typically
Yeah.
developing babies
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
No cooing and babbling back and forth
Yeah.
of the babies. By 14 months, if children don't kind of point at things which interest them,
Hmm.
where they see a plane in the sky or a car on the road,
Yeah.
when there is unusual behavior like flapping hands,
Hmm.
walking on toes. I remember we used to walk on his toes.
Hmm.
A preference to
As
play
a
by.
baby used to work.
He used to walk on his toes. Once he started walking, he would walk on his toes. Toe walking is very common.
Okay.
It is one of the indicators.
Yeah.
This doesn't mean that if your child walks on their toes that they're definitely autistic, but it's one of the many indicators. Being very aloof,
Yeah.
not mixing with other people,
Yeah.
having unusual reactions to different kinds of stimuli.
Yeah.
So I remember the sound of a pressure cooker would set Veer off and he would close his ears.
Yeah.
Which was perfectly with my daughter Gayatri. It didn't seem to bother her. Firecrackers. At the same time, what he would do is go and seek out, if he went to a party and there was a loudspeaker, he would go and stand very close to the loudspeaker and put his hands on it. Okay, the vibration.
Right.
So those kind of things, and again, communication, right? Where a child has a certain kind of trajectory that they follow in terms of the communication. That they start babbling, they vocalize, they start babbling, then they make 2-syllabic sounds, mama, papa, dada, kind of
Yeah.
thing, and then they move on to 1 word, 2 words. When a child does not do that, if there are no words by 16 months, that is when parents should go to a developmental pediatrician
Yeah.
and ask for their advice. At the most, the developmental pediatrician will say, it's fine.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with your child.
But
It's
better to
totally fine.
Yeah,
But
an
it is
opinion.
better to just get an opinion
Yeah.
the minute you notice something which is different about your child.
Yeah.
Just so that you can start early intervention, because
Yeah.
early intervention has been shown to really succeed. So the earlier you intervene
Yeah.
with your child, the better.
I love how respectful you are of his journey, right? You, at the same time, also acknowledged parents' frustration. I remember reading this in the book that as a mother of a child on the autism spectrum, I've lost track of the number of times I've been embarrassed by his behavior, but I've never been ashamed of my son. And I think this is such a beautiful lens, of humor, patience, and courage that's really captured the way you've cooked, Gopika. And I mean, I think in those little moments, what is a parent supposed to do? Because I have a 3-year-old and I call them the parent bombs, right? The kids have this amazing capacity to launch these parent bombs at the most inopportune time. So how should parents cope in these situations? Because parenting is tough enough. We need to remove the halo effect from it first of all, even for for any kind of parent. So how should is patience, humor, kindness, courage, everything that you display, is that the only way to do it?
So I think I decided very early on that I can keep crying or I can laugh on occasion.
Yeah.
And that really, really helped. That the fact that I decided very early on that I would not pity it.
Hmm.
And we have this whole thing in India of being bichara.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
The poor thing, he's on the spectrum, poor thing. And I remember very clearly even talking to a couple of relatives and saying, there's nothing bichara about him.
Yeah.
So stop it.
Yeah.
He's absolutely fine.
Yeah. Treat him as normal.
Treat
And then
him
you have
as you would a typical child.
Yeah.
I remember when I went and met our developmental pediatrician, Dr. Vibha Krishnamurthy. She had told us very clearly early on that just because he's got autism, it doesn't mean that he has to turn into a brat. So that was something which really stayed with me, because I realized that I had to bring him up as I would any if he had not had autism. He was
Yeah.
not any different.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So in that sense, I think that really helped. I think the other thing that really helped me was that I was studying Vedanta with the Chinmaya mission, and I think that very strong belief um, in spirituality and having something to hold on to made a big difference.
Right.
It made a huge difference because it made you realize that there is what is your purpose in life and why have you been put in this position. So one of the things that I studied was that you are never put in a position unless you are ready for it
Yeah.
and unless you can learn from it.
Yeah.
And that is something which really, really stayed with me. That I can either collapse and become bitter and angry, which is not to say that I wasn't. There were times when I was very bitter and angry and very sad,
Yeah.
but it was a phase. Or I can move on and learn from this and evolve.
Right.
And so that is something which I consciously had to decide. It wasn't easy, but it had to be done.
What about siblings? You mentioned Gayatri, and they're called neurotypical siblings,
Yes.
right? And according to studies, a neurotypical sibling will either feel left out, and then they'll act out, or they'll become very mature, much more mature than their peers, for example, very responsible, right, early on in life. So, as a parent, if you have a sibling to your autistic child, how do you rise up to the challenges? How do you make the children bond, most importantly? And as a parent, how do you make sure the siblings are both given equal attention? Because, like you said, even in Veer's case, don't make him
Right.
feel like either don't put him on a pedestal
Exactly.
or a bichara.
Exactly.
So again, how does sibling figure in all of this?
So this is an entire chapter in Beyond the Blue. Actually, we were very conscious of making sure that they had equal time because they were twins. They are twins, right?
Yeah.
So we made it a point to spend individual time with each of them.
Yeah.
After his diagnosis, I think this became especially important, and which is not to say that they were in love with each other to start from.
Yeah.
To start with, we were went through a very, very bad phase where Gayatri would keep saying, I wish he wasn't around, and why is he being so difficult? And she was a child herself, so that's something which we were very conscious about. That it didn't mean that just because she is his sister, that she has to look after him, and that, I mean, they're 15 years old now, almost 16,
Right.
and that's something we're conscious of even now, that at no point of time is she his caretaker.
Okay.
The fact that she protects him on her own
Yeah.
is a bonus.
Which is natural.
Which is
for
natural.
siblings, Yeah.
But it's not that you are responsible for your
Yeah.
brother
Yeah.
at all.
Okay.
So a lot of time spent with her individually, a lot of time talking to her.
Yeah.
We also make sure that the A word, as we call it,
Yeah.
was not discussed in the house.
Okay.
Right? So it became part of life.
Yeah. Normal
And it
conversation.
was normal conversation. Also it helped with the work I was doing.
Yeah. But it takes away the power of the taboo. also,
Exactly.
right? Like with everything
Exactly.
else. Yeah.
And so it was something that she couldn't talk about.
Yeah.
So I remember when she was in the 4th grade on World Autism Awareness Day, she even did a presentation in school
Okay.
in front of her classmates.
Yeah.
And so that spread an acceptance within her classmates as well. So they knew when they came over that there was her brother and he was slightly different. He may just say hi to them, he may not,
Yeah.
and he'll be in his room,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
So it kind of normalized the whole thing. And I think for her, because we normalized it so much, it became part of life.
Yeah.
Honestly, what really worked for us was the fact that because, like I said, that they're twins, we told her, don't think of him as your twin brother, think of him as your younger brother.
Okay.
And that really helped. But I think for parents out there who have younger siblings, older siblings who are on the spectrum,
Yeah.
I would say that it's very, very important that the burden doesn't fall on the
So they
on
don't
the
become
neurotypical
resentful
child.
or-
Exactly. They cannot become resentful. The other thing is, I was reading a very interesting study that in the cases of siblings who become very mature and who kind of take on the onus of their autistic sibling, or become very responsible, a very key important factor in this is the mother's mental health.
Okay.
Because if the maternal mental health is not strong, I mean, if the mother is not mentally strong, if her mental health is a condition, is an issue,
Yeah.
and if she is struggling with her own mental health issues,
Yeah.
then she will obviously not have time to spend with the neurotypical sibling,
Yeah.
give them the time and attention that they need and deserve. So again, for parents to ensure that they are taking care of themselves, it is not a luxury,
Yeah.
it is a necessity.
That's a very, very good point. Speaking of mental health, isn't, I mean, I know this is kind of, again, off limits. We all think about it, but it's never discussed publicly. But I think it's important that we do. So again, we normalize the conversation that it's very normal to feel, and you've gone through this, of course, that why me, right? Why was I singled out? Am I unlucky? Did I do something wrong? Why is God not like me? Whatever.
Yeah, of
You go
course.
through all these range of
Absolutely.
emotions, like, and you cope with it through, say, spirituality or keeping your mental health strong. But what should a parent do, especially a mother, right? Because especially in India, most of the burden of parenting still falls on the mother.
Yes.
And it's as it is. I'm a mother, and I know it's how exhausting it is. So how do you surmount all these feelings that are natural?
So of course I went through the YB. Of course I went through this whole thing of why. I mean, this whole tag of not wanting to be a special needs mom,
Yeah.
of not wanting to be branded and kind of slotted in this category.
Yeah.
And it was something which was very, very difficult for a long, long time. I think what helped me was just getting on with it and doing what needed to be done initially,
Yeah.
and then being able to process my feelings and tell myself it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to just stay up at night and cry and cry and cry, and it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Cut yourself some slack.
Exactly. The other thing that would happen and it continued to happen for a very long time, was this tremendous feeling of guilt if I left the kids and went off somewhere.
Yeah.
I would feel that till they were quite old.
Yeah.
This feeling that, oh God, I should be spending time with my children. But then the realization that no, I do have to protect my own time. And I do need to have that time for my own mental sanity.
Yeah.
Whether it was to just sit and look out the window, whether it was to go for a walk, whether it was to listen to music, whatever it was,
Yeah.
I needed that little bit of time to myself because I realized when I didn't have it, I was so angry and irritable with the kids. I was doing nobody any favors,
Of course. Yeah.
right? So that was very important.
My pediatrician had told me that when I became a new mother, he said there's no award for being a super mother.
Yeah.
So just
Exactly.
give
There isn't.
yourself a break.
There isn't. You
Yeah.
have to give yourself a break. But I think for mothers who especially, and also fathers, I've met a lot of fathers who really have really struggle with accepting the diagnosis and coming to terms with it. If they feel that they cannot cope with it on themselves, there is no shame going to a counselor. There is no shame seeking out medical help because that is extremely necessary. That if they feel that they don't have support at home, because a lot of parents don't, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I was fortunate. I came from a family where I had a lot of support.
Yeah.
But a lot of families are not supportive. A lot of and the other thing that autism does is it can socially isolate a family because you never know when your child will act out. You never know what kind of behaviors the child will display.
Yeah.
So if you would go to with a typical child, go to a wedding, you will meet people. If you
Yeah.
go to a puja, you will meet people. If you go to a birthday party, you will meet people. Here you don't know, and so then what a lot of families prefer to do is just isolate themselves, right? So
That's not recommended, right?
it's so again while they may not want to really throw themselves out there
Yeah.
with the child, and there may be again things which might send things in the environment which might kind of set off the child's sensory behaviors.
Yeah.
What we do is encourage them to do it one step at a time.
Yeah.
And again, for them to seek support, because even if sometimes it's easier to tell your problems to an outsider, you know. So to seek, there's nothing wrong in seeking professional support. In fact, it's something that I would strongly encourage parents to do if they feel they can't.
And just to wrap up, we touched upon society's reaction, the role of society in a family's life, families that have autistic kids. We know that especially in India, there's not a lot of awareness and no education. Even pediatricians, like you mentioned, barely have any knowledge of the same. Because of this lack of awareness, there's a lack of sensitivity, right? Now, in Mumbai, of course, a city like ours, you're preaching to the converted. People are pretty sensitive most of the time. But if you go down to the smaller towns and tier 1, tier 2 cities, or say in villages, how can a book like Beyond the Blue help people, help kind of create awareness, raise the conversation, take it forward, especially for parents, like you said, the isolation bit. Where does the book then come in?
So I think one of the first things that I decided once Beyond the Blue was on its way to publication was to translate it into Hindi. So that is a work in progress.
Yeah.
It's happening because I think that while the English-speaking audience is going to be able to get the, I write in English, I think in English,
Yeah.
but I think it needs to be able to really reach people all over India. It has to be in Hindi. And so I am working on translating it into Hindi. What I'm hoping that this book does is that it really makes parents feel empowered. It makes them feel positive about having a child who's on the autism spectrum. I hope that they feel that our life is not over. Yes, it has changed.
Yes.
Nobody is saying it's not changed. Of course, it's changed. Every aspect of it has changed.
Which is true whenever you have kids, right?
Which is true also for whenever you have kids, especially when you have a child. Any child with special needs, of course, it will change.
Right.
But it does not mean that it's over, and that you can still choose to find your happiness because of and despite
Right.
or whatever other developmental condition that your child has.
Yeah.
And also that these children have not been born to make your life difficult, even though it may seem like it. That's not why they've been born, right? They each can learn. They can each reach their potential, no matter what that may be.
And Gupta, tell us about, you mentioned that initially, there were a lot of fights with your husband Mohit when you found out that you have a child on the autism spectrum. How does the dynamics between a couple play out when there's an autistic child in the family?
So, actually, like I said, it changes every aspect of your life, and
Yeah.
obviously the marriage changes.
Yeah.
So there are, I think, when you Google autism and marriage, there are these very scary statistics which are thrown out at you, which ranging from 23% to 80% of couples who get divorced after their child gets a diagnosis.
Oh.
And of course, on reading further, you realize that this is usually the case with in which a marriage in any case has issues.
Okay.
And this is kind of like the last straw. Yeah. In our case, yes, it was difficult. We fought a lot. There were lots of things which I felt he didn't do right. There were lots of things he felt I didn't do right. There was a lot of stress, especially initially. I would say there was a lot of stress. You are trying to come to terms with your child's diagnosis. You're trying to come to terms with who you will be as a parent, who you will be as a person,
Yeah.
what your place in society is like going to be. You're going to come to terms with how much time you're going to spend
Yeah.
in terms of therapy.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, women usually are the ones who give up their jobs,
Yes.
right? Because
Yeah.
you need somebody to look after this child and be the
Primary
primary caregiver, and it invariably comes down to the woman.
Yes.
And so, of course, with the loss of the job comes the loss of financial independence, the loss of having a say in the marriage.
Yeah.
So there are so many factors which come into play,
Yes.
right? I remember this one incident when Mohit was traveling for work, and I had the worst day with Veer. And he called in the evening and he said, "How was your day?" And I lost it, and I yelled at him. And I said, "You don't understand what it's like. You're sitting in this restaurant having dinner, and you don't understand what it's like for me. And I've done this, I've had to deal with this all day.
Yeah.
You have no idea how difficult it is." And I just let loose.
Right.
Thinking he kind of understood what I was going through,
Yeah.
and he was able to handle it without losing it back on me. But we've been through ups and downs. There were times when it was very, very difficult. But I think what really kind of got us through was coming back after these shouting episodes and saying, "Okay, we're a team, we need to get through this together.
Right.
We have to deal with whatever it is,
Yeah.
we have to deal with it together." So now, after all these years, I think there are, and I'm not saying that there won't be challenges ahead, right? There will be different challenges. They take on different forms.
Yeah.
And do we still fight about the kids sometimes? Of course we do, right? But then we've learned to kind of section it and compartmentalize it,
Yeah.
so that arguing about Veer doesn't mean we are arguing about us,
Exactly. Yes.
right? So we have definitely compartmentalized it, and so we've learned to really separate arguments about the children.
Yeah.
We're all Gayatri, I would say,
Yes.
into not let that spill over into our relationship.
Yeah. And you guys have a beautiful, strong marriage. I've seen both of you together, and God bless both of you. So there you have it. Thank you so much, Gopika
Thank you.
Kapoor, for writing this beautiful, insightful book. It's going to help so many people on this journey, and I think you've magically put into words a healing for parents across the spectrum.
I hope
so
that's what it
kudos
does.
to you. And Beyond the Blue, you have to get your copy. Not just for those who have an autistic child, but even to understand what goes into it and to increase your awareness. And thank you for writing this book.
Thank you.
Gopika. It had
Thank
to
you
be
so
done.
much. Thank you.